Hey everybody, so you know that I switched recently to an all Linux desktop, and that has come with some frustrations. One of them being that I normally use AirDrop, like from my phone, and it's an iPhone, and I will drop like videos or files directly onto my desktop. My Mac desktop. Unfortunately, with Linux, I can't do that, but there's a really cool app called Snapdrop that works remarkably well, and you can self-host it without any problems, and it just works good. So let me show you how it works, and then I want to explain a few caveats. But before I do that, I want to say thank you so much to my Patreon. Oh, no, I think they're over here. My Patreon supporters who make these videos possible. We will get back into the Linux Plus course very shortly. I'm still trying to get my virtual machines to work right. But without the support of Patreon patrons and everybody who shares this and likes it in comments, I wouldn't be able to make this happen as often as I do. So thank you so much. And let's check out Snapdrop, which is really kind of cool. So I have Snapdrop installed here, and it's just on one of my domains. I'm going to show you some details, but first I want to show you how it works. So let me start up my phone, and through the magic of post editing, I believe I'll be able to, you should be able to see what I'm doing. So I'm going to hit Snapdrop, which is just a web shortcut that will go to my domain. And we can see on my phone, it says that I see a Linux Chrome machine called Magenta Muskox. And then here, as you can see, I see Copper Emu, which is my phone. And so I'm connected to this snap.snar.co, which is actually a live thing. You can use this one too if you want. I don't see any of your data. It just uses JavaScript and WebRTC. But anyway, the nice thing is if I'm on my phone, I can click on the device that I see. And let's say I want to send something from my photo library. I will send a picture from Halloween yesterday. Click add, it sends it, and then here on this side I get a nice little pop-up that says, would you like to save this? And I'll say yes, and then it just downloads it like normal, which is really cool. I can do the same thing backwards. I can click on this, and let's see, what do I have? Anything? Well, that's the file that I just sent. Oh no, here's another one. Here's my granddaughter with green hair. So I'm going to send that file, and you can see it popped up right on my phone. Would I like to do that? I'll click save, and I will download it. The only downside is if I send it to my phone, it ends up in my files instead of my photo library, but I can find that just fine on my phone. And this is something you can install really easily, or you can just use mine. Like I said, it just uses JavaScript. I don't actually see your files or anything like that. But there's a couple caveats that you need to know. If you install it, first, I highly recommend using the Docker image that is included. I'll put all the links in the description below, but basically, if you start up a Docker instance and you expose a port, you can connect directly to your Docker server on that port, and it will work perfectly for your internal networking. You don't have to expose anything to the internet. Okay, so that's definitely like what I would normally do if I wasn't a geek and wanted to have it available publicly. But anyway, all you have to do is spin up Docker and it'll work. I'll show you the Docker command that I use to spin it up, and then I'll tell you the caveat for publicly hosting. So this is actually my live Docker server that I run. I use systemd in order to restart my Docker things, but you don't have to. This is just basically a Docker run command. I named it Snapdrop just because I wanted to, be able to see it. And then the two ports, the internal port is port 80, and I'm just exposing port 8081, but I'm also exposing the Node.js server port. And that's what I need if I'm going to host it publicly and have it work right. Because normally you would think, okay, all you need to do is set up a reverse proxy and point to port 8081 and it'll work. And it will, but it doesn't limit it to the local network. So anyway, I'm going to show you how it works here if I just connect to my Docker server on port 8081. So let's go over here, and I'm going to say HTTP Docker port 8081. And here I am, Violet Cat. I actually stopped the recording on my phone. But if I were to go to the same thing on my phone, boom, you can see my phone popped up. It is Plum Raven is what it called my phone. All right. So it works perfectly fine internally. Again, you're not exposing any ports to the outside world. This is all internal. So if you want to do it just for your internal use, you can. However, if you want it to be public, you actually need to separate the Node.js part from the client part, the web pages part. And that's where it gets a little bit complicated. And the reason is when you do a reverse proxy and you pass the client IP address, it looks at that address, and if it's on the same network as another user who's connected, it will show each other that user. But if you just direct it right to port 8081 from your reverse proxy, it's going to see everybody as coming from the reverse proxy. And it's kind of like double proxying because this image has Nginx built in, and you're basically going from whatever your reverse proxy, Caddy in my case, to Nginx, and then that's going into the Node.js server, and that's one too many steps, and so it doesn't know who the end user really is. And that is what, if you go over here to Snapdrop.app is a publicly hosted Snapdrop server. The problem is they aren't separating it properly, and so anybody who happens to be using it on the internet, you see as a person here. Now, you couldn't send messages to them because it sends it directly over the local network. However, we see them, and that's really annoying and not terribly useful. So this is what happens if you try to do that double proxy thing where you use the built-in Nginx server on the Docker container and also try to reverse proxy yourself. So what you end up having to do, let's go over to my Caddy server. I'll show you what I did. BI Snapdrop. So this is my configuration for the snap.snar.co machine. Okay. Basically, I have the client files, which are available at the GitHub repository for Snapdrop. I have the client files in var www snapdrop. I'll show you that in a second. And I serve them out just like a regular web server. Okay. It's just a regular web server serving out HTML files. However, the /server location, I reverse proxy to port 3000 on my Docker server, which is directly to the Node.js server inside that Docker container. Okay, so that's where the magic happens. You have to go directly to the Node.js server and not to the port 8081. Okay, because that's one too many steps. So if you do it this way, there's an example actually in the GitHub repository for Snapdrop on how to do it with Nginx. I use Caddy. But anyway, this is what you have to do. And then it will not show you people who are not on your local network when you connect. So I can have 1,000 people using my Snapdrop server, and only people who are coming from the same network are going to see each other, which more than a security thing, it's a lack of annoyance thing because they only are able to transfer files if they're on the local network together. So you don't want to see anybody else on there, not just for privacy's sake, but because it's not useful to see anybody else. Anyway, that's how it works. And if we go into Snapdrop, you'll see this is just from the GitHub repository of the Snapdrop server. And these are just this is just the stuff inside the client folder. In fact, let's go there. This is the Snapdrop repository, and all that stuff is just what's inside this client folder. I just copied all that stuff into my folder. I serve it out, and I just make sure that my web server is sending /server to my internal Node.js server, which is running on his Docker instance, right? I just used his Docker container. But rather than using his Nginx instance, I'm just going right to the internal Node.js server. Hopefully that wasn't too complicated. It was a little bit weird for me to try to figure out exactly how I was going to separate the client stuff from the internal stuff. It turns out I didn't have to make a special Docker container. I'm just not using the Nginx portion of the provided Docker container, right? I'm using his Docker container, his instance. It's all brand new and it's all up to date. I'm spinning it up, but I'm just pointing directly to that port 3000 with my client side files on my own web server so that I get that feature where it doesn't show everybody else in the whole world. And like I said, you're welcome just to use my app if you want. It's snap.snar.co. Very little resources. It's not going to really do much if you use it, and so you're welcome to do so. But anyway, if you want to set it up on your own, you can use that Docker container and just point to whatever port you set. Like I used 8081, and you don't have to worry about exposing anything externally, and you'll be able to transfer files back and forth from computer to computer or phone to computer or phone to phone. It works just like Apple's AirDrop, but doesn't require an Apple device. Anyway, I hope that was helpful. Remember to learn everything, do what you love, and most importantly, be kind. I'll see you in the next video.